All right, let's return to what we just left off. That the Jewish people, in order to get out of Egypt, God had to break Egypt. God had to break Egypt. Egypt was like a shell over a fruit, over a nut, and it had to be broken in order to see what was inside. Something like the soul. Jewish people are something like the soul comes into the body. And soul, before it comes into the body, is totally aware of God. But when it comes into the body, as the body covers it over, covers over the soul, so that you don't see the soul, you don't see God, you don't see you're being created. All you can do is feel yourself and egotism, and that covers over godliness. But the purpose of life, and we're going to get to this, is not to break Egypt, is not to break out of the world, it's not to go to heaven. The purpose is not, in order to accomplish this the first time, that's what it had to be done. We had to break Egypt. Nowadays, we have to break our hearts, so to speak, our unjustified or exaggerated connection to the world. The world makes us afraid. The world makes us love. The world makes us interested. The world makes us excited. The world gives us happiness. The world gives us sadness. Everything connected to the world. That's a natural person, right? But it shouldn't be that way. It should be that our connection is to the creator of the world, but we don't see the creator. Our love should be to the creator of the world. We don't feel the creator is valuable. We don't even feel that he exists. So therefore, we have to break our heart in order to reveal that our soul should be dominant over our body. We should have a body. Then now we can understand what it says on when the Jews went over Yam Suf. They went over, it's called the Red Sea. God split the sea, and it said, the reason I'm splitting the sea, said God, is that in order that Egypt will know that I am God. They'll know that I'm God. It says that there's always a big question that's asked. The Egyptians that went over the sea, God shows them, I'm going to show them something, going to teach them a lesson, and they're going to know that I'm God. What did he do? He killed them all. So they didn't, what did they know? They're all dead. Shari Lahalan later, it says, Loni Sharm Yaman Achad. It says that the splitting of Yam Suf, when God split it, it said that he split it for the Jews that went over, and then the Egyptians tried to pursue them, and they got caught in the middle. They all drowned. None of them left. Ella, so what does it mean that God said, I want them to know? What are they going to know? They're not even alive anymore. What can they know? Can't teach a dead person anything. A dead person can't testify. Ella, the parish, what does it mean? Yadu means breaking. Yadu Mitzrayim, I will break Egypt. And by means of this, there will be revealed godliness to these sparks of godliness, which are in everything, that will be released. And frankly speaking, simply speaking, it means that the Jewish people will go out of their false identity. They thought they were slaves to Egypt. And really, the Jewish people are servants of God to reveal the good that's in the world. Similarly, it is also the same thing as all the 10 plagues. All the 10 plagues that God gave to the Egyptians, this was to break the klippah, to break these shells and take out the good from them, the godliness which is in them. But the Jewish people themselves, lo yitzurachim lo movtim, they didn't need these miracles. The 10 plagues were not to prove that God exists. The 10 plagues were not to impress the Jewish people at all. The 10 plagues were to nullify, to subjugate, to break the power of Egypt, to break the power of the world. The Jewish people, they didn't need this. The Jewish people, the Jewish people, they are believers, the sons of believers. They didn't need these plagues. Like it says, Vayamin the people, Jewish people, as soon as Moses came, they believed. Vayishmu, and they listened to Moshe, that God had visited them. Finally, God has taken them out. They believed it. But in order to take these sparks which are in the klippas in the world, there had to be the 10 plagues. So again, the job of the Jewish people is to fix up the world. And all the time that the Jewish people were slaves in Egypt, of course, they couldn't do this. And not only could they not do it because they were slaves, but they also couldn't do it because the sparks of holiness that they were supposed to elevate, they were also slaves. They're also slaves. It's almost like, let's say, a person, he goes and he buys a puzzle. He goes in and he buys a puzzle in the store, a 50,000 piece puzzle. He put it together, right? And he brings it home, and he's an expert at putting together puzzles, and he can do it. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be, there's a lot of, right? There's like, it's a 50,000 piece puzzle, but there's like 500,000 pieces. You have to get rid of the bad pieces first, and then you can put them all together. Good. But the box is closed. Can't figure out how to open the box. There's no way to open. Now that I don't know if it's that way in America, but in Israel, and they have, sometimes you buy these appliances from the store, and it's sealed up so well, plastic is a little bit thick, you just can't get it open. You know, if you don't happen to have a knife in the house, if you're going to buy your only knife in the house, I don't know how you get the thing open if you haven't got any other knife, because you have to cut it open. It's very, very difficult. So you have this whole puzzle, which is the world, and if you put it together, it's very beautiful. But it's in a box. You can't get it out. So the same thing, the Jewish people, they were in the world. They had the ability to fix up the world, right? They were going to receive the Torah. But the problem was the world was in a box. All the good that was in the world, to put it together, it was trapped in Egypt. So that had to be broken. That had to be broken. So therefore, that was the whole idea of the 10 plagues, because the bad, which was covering over, was very, very powerful. God was creating it. That's why the first of the 10 commandments is, I am God that took you out of Egypt. It's a big accomplishment for God. God could have decimated all Egypt. God creates Egypt. That's bigger. He says, no. Because God creates it, and he creates it with a godly intention to cover over godliness, so that we should work to bring it out, that we should give God pleasure by going against nature, is therefore God put this power in nature, a godly power. And to go out is very difficult. The Jewish people had to do a lot in order to inspire God to take them out of Egypt. They suffered for 210 years. Okay, so what's the Rebbe saying up to now? There's good and there's bad. Good is what the Torah says reveals God, and bad is what covers over. But bad is called shells, klippa. It's called sitra achra, the other side. Anything which conceals the godliness, conceals the true identity of the Jewish people, conceals the true purpose of the Torah, but that's called klippa. It could look very nice. It could be in the guise of religion, in the guise of, the politics. We have our country now. We have our army, and we have our this and that. All those things could be the klippa, the shell that covers over godliness, and therefore those things have to be opened up. And we have to realize our connection to them should not be an essential connection. Our essential connection has to be with God. And the connection we have with the world, or with the country, or with this, is that has to be, how do you say, broken. Broken. Treat the world as though it's a customer, not family. And the family. The world is something you have to work on. But it's not you. And so the real you is the creator. Now we can understand why it is the first miracle that God made was, for Moses, was taking the stick and turning it into a snake. Why? Shezeu Kadma. This is the preface. This is the general theme of all of the 10 plagues. In fact, it's the general theme for all of Judaism. Behold, Inyan Eser Makos, the whole idea of the 10 plagues that God brought onto Egypt, right? Blood and frogs. It's explained that this was to break the klippa, like we just finished saying, to break the shells, which are a yesh, but davar b'fnei atzmo, which are a separate thing on itself. Like it says, the Yoeri, to me, is the river. Egotism. I created the river, I created God, I created everything. But they say that God is called the God of gods. There must be some big, he's sitting far away. God is very far away. But as far as who's boss in this world, it's me. It's me. That's called klippa. And the idea of the miracles was to show that even though that there is klippa and sitra achra, even though that the world in this case, Egypt. Egypt ruled, right? There was a country of idolatry. It was a country of evil. It was decadent, totally licentious over there. They had no morals whatsoever. They're just obsessed with sex, something like, what is it, San Francisco or something. And there was just obsession with sexual things. It says that there's even a commandment in the Torah. This says, what they did in Egypt, you shouldn't do. You shouldn't do. This is what did they do in Egypt? What's so bad? So a woman would get married to two men. Women would get married to each other. Right? The things that they tried to push in America. That's called an obsession with yourself. With yourself. What I think, what I want, what I know. That's called klippen sitra achra. All the other 10 plagues that he made, even though Egypt covers over godliness, even though that Egypt is the enemy of godliness, egotism is the enemy of Judaism. Selfishness, it's the enemy of the Torah. But nevertheless, where does this selfishness, where does this egotism come? Where does evil come from? It comes from God. God creates everything. Every moment. Really, they are not a separate thing on their own. Like it seems. The world is not really a separate thing in themselves. The angels, the forces, whatever. Right now in the news, they have this big thing about, are there aliens? Is the American government covering it up? There are aliens. Aliens are coming, right? Or there's people in the Jews say, is Trump good? Is he bad? Is he did? Oh, look what he did this. Look what he said this. Look at this. Okay, all these things are nice. It's very nice, that you're interested in these things. But don't put too much importance to this. Don't put too importance to this, because if you do, it means that you're denying the fact that all this is being created by God. It's all being created by God. And even though that if it's created by God, so you should pay a little bit of attention to it. It's God's creation. But that creation shouldn't divert your attention from the main thing. Really, the fact is that the whole world, with all the klippa, with Egypt, with all the snakes, with all the evil in the world, is really, in fact, being created by and is totally plugged into and surrendered to God. But just how did this klippa and this evil, how does this exist? By coverings and many, many levels, which are tremendously powerful. So much that these concealments and hiding, so that they're able to say that maybe there is no God. Right? That's it. God creates Egypt. God is creating Egypt. He's creating Egypt also in us. He's creating our egotism, our separateness, our atheism, you want to call it. God's creating it all the time. It's a creation of God. And it's a creation of God to the degree that God is creating me. And I say, I don't think God exists. What do you mean he doesn't exist? If God didn't exist, you wouldn't exist. That's your whole existence. That's where it comes from. So, no, that's what you think, but that's not what I think. How can you say that? God is creating you. I don't feel it. You know why I don't feel it? Because God doesn't want me to feel it. God himself covered himself over. There's nothing outside of God. It's not that there's two forces over here. There's the God of evil, there's the God of good, there's the God of night, there's the God of day, there's this. It's not so. There's the devil and there's God. The devil, in fact, is a creation of God. The evil impulse is a creation of God. All the bad things are creations of God, but God creates them in such a way that they can oppose him. They can oppose him. That's the way the world is. God wants there to be a real world. And therefore, or when there is revealed this ray of godliness from above, when you turn on the lights, which is above all these contractions, when you see really where it's all coming from, then all of the evil and the bad, suddenly it realizes, wow, I didn't know you were watching. I didn't know you were looking, God. I didn't know you cared. I didn't know you were even here. And that's the thing of the miracles. The miracles were 10 different types of revelation of God to dissipate, to weaken, to break this selfishness of Egypt, the evil of Egypt. 10 different types, each one according to its own different type of evil. By means of this, Moramorphous Rishon, that was the whole purpose of the first miracle. The first miracle was taking the stick and turning it into a snake. What did that do? That didn't wreck anything. It didn't accomplish anything. It just came to show that the snake, the staff turned into a snake. What does it mean? The staff, this is like the staff of life. This is drawing down hamshacha, a drawing down of life, v'hataya, and mateh means lahatot, to incline. That God, so to speak, brings himself down into the world. He tips himself over into the world. Peres, it became also another word for a mateh is a shevet. Shevet also is the language of being drawn down, like kochav a shevet, like a shooting star. So the staff of Moses shows on God being drawn down into the world, revealing up God. Hainu kolam shachaserish, also namely the whole entire chain of creation, spiritual and a little lower level of spiritual, of holiness from the top of levels to the bottom levels, because holiness is where God is revealed. That's what God, holiness is, what God is revealed. Right? What does it say? There's a 6th chapter of the Tanya. And what doesn't reveal God, that's because God made a special force that conceals him. And the more God is concealed, that's called below. But tanin, so that's the staff. The staff comes from the highest to the lowest. It's a stick that comes down from the essence of holiness down to revealed holiness into the world. That's godliness. What's the snake? The snake, tanin, this is the source of evil, klippa, of Egypt. Like it says, a tanin, a gadol, rovitz b'toch yor. This is like the big crocodile or the big serpent, whatever, that crouches in the river. That's Paro. The hero Moshe. So Moshe showed Aaron how it is that the staff transformed into a snake. What does that mean? That all this evil that you see in the world is just comes from the staff. There's no other force in the world except for God. I know that from this level of light and drawing down godliness, of holiness, that's called the mateh, that's called the staff, is drawn down life and existence to the serpent, makra klippus, which comes from evil. Like it says, her feet go down to death. So what does this basically mean? It basically means that the world God gave the world power to cover over and to oppose godliness, gave it the power. And the world has the license to make trouble for us and to confuse us and to get us angry and to get us lustful and to get us whatever it is, the crazy, or to get us addicted or to get us angry. The world, it was given a permission to do so by God. But don't think that the world is really serious. The world is only doing this in order to challenge us, to give us an opportunity. Because there's nothing outside of God. Like it says, Malchut b'kol mashallah. Like it says, God, your kingship rules over everything. But this is by means of, so why don't we see the godliness in, Stalin, or it's being created by God, right? It's being created by God. Why? Why don't we see the godliness? Because this godliness comes down through all these contractions and concealments until it can be exactly the opposite and turn into like what's called the snake, the serpent, evil. That by means of tremendous concealment and contractions is concealed the flow of godliness below so much, ad kolkach, so much, ad sheyochel liot, there could be hitavut bechinat atanim, till there can even be what's called this big serpent in the river, harovitz v'tochayah, that crouches in the river, the Nile River, and says, Leah, that's Paro. Says the Paro he's the big serpent, and he says, the river belongs to me, and I created myself. So what's really going on? In fact, God is creating him. In fact, God is creating everything, even this evil. And that's what the staff is coming to tell us. The staff, all the evil in the world really comes from God. Don't think it comes from an independent source. It's got a limit, evil. And afterwards, Herelo, God showed him how it is that the snake turned back to being a stick again. Begam Yivla Mata, and also the staff of Aaron, it swallowed up their staffs. Hainu, Shechazer Bechinas Hatani, that this serpent, which is evil, it came back to its source again, holiness, like it was in the beginning. That, like we said, that's what it means to raise up the sparks, we said before. That's what he showed to Paro and to the Egyptians. Namely, what? That you, Paro, and you, Egyptians, you are not a separate entity. Don't think that you are God. Don't think you're God. You feel like God. Everybody calls you God. You're treated like God. Everybody has their picture in your picture in their front room. Another says, "Our Lord," right? God. You're not God. Not God. Don't fool yourself. Don't let other people fool you. You aren't God. That's why he showed the miracle to Paro. Paro didn't take the lesson then, but it says that in the future, in the future redemption, that Paro will. The non-Jews will come and become aware that, in fact, the God of Israel is creating them for free, from love. The fact is that Paro is not a separate thing on his own, but every moment is drawn to Paro and all the forces of evil and separateness, life from God. Elahu Yisbrach Shel Mastata, but it's just concealed. And if he wants to, he can transform it to a snake, and the Nefach HaNachash, he can transform the snake from below, and it'll be just like it never was. And similarly was all of the miracles that were done in Egypt, Ani Hashem Lo Shanisi, that God said, I will never change. So what does it mean? It means that Moses was showing the theme to Paro of what the miracles are. What are the miracles? The staff represents godliness, and the snake represents evil. The staff, he turned into a snake, coming to show you that where is the snake coming from? It's coming from the staff. And if you have any doubt, so he turned the snake back to a staff again to show you that, in fact, the snake has no real, true, absolute existence apart from God. And that was the whole purpose of the plagues, the 10 plagues, and that was the whole purpose of the Jewish people right now, to show that there's nothing except for the Creator, and the Creator is creating everything. And when that's revealed, then the snake will be gone. In fact, there's a midrash that says the snake in the future is going to be a big servant to God. Shamash Gadol says it'll be a big servant to God. In any case, to transform the world to what it really is, a creation of God, practical, dynamic, alive, healthy. And this was all hinted at by Moses turning the staff into a snake. Good. Now,